Hi, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us Bobby Wise. Bobby is the program director for MVP Chicago, and that's merging vets and players. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hey, Roy, thanks for having me. It's really awesome to be here.
We're excited that you're able to join us and share a little bit more about the Merging Vets and Players program that you're involved in. Before we dive into that, I'd love to get a little bit of your background and have you share with our listeners what drew you in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a lifelong Chicagoan, the son of a military veteran. I actually come from a bit of a military family. I was born and raised on the north side of Chicago, same house for 18 years. So naturally, I joined the Army to get as far away as possible. And I made it all the way to Baghdad and figured, that's probably far enough. I came back to Chicago in 2006 after 2 tours in Iraq. I was a Black Hawk helicopter crew chief with the 101st Airborne and 3rd Infantry Division. And I've been, ever since I started classes at UIC on the GI Bill, I've been working in the veterans sphere, either as a volunteer with nonprofit organizations or as a staffer. And I've been program manager with the Chicago chapter of MVP for about a year and a half now, since the summer of 2018.
And so as you did your duty and everything, and then you came back to MVP, but give us a sense of what was the attraction. Where did you start coming and looking at the whole process to be able to decide that this is a direction you wanted to go?
As I said, being born and raised in Chicago, we've got 6 great professional sports teams here in the Big 5 professional sports, and I love following all of them. I've always loved being a part of a team, and when I joined MVP, I actually initially joined to be a member. I had been doing freelance work for about a year and a half at that point. I'd been working from home. The cat was starting to talk to me too much, and the cat was starting to make a little too much sense. So it was time to get a regular 9-to-5 job. And my job prior to that, I had been a career coach. So I was being my own client, in effect. And the first thing that I tell everybody is to rely on your network. That's where your next opportunity usually comes from. So my network is in the veteran sphere. And I started looking for networking events. The first one I saw was this opportunity to work out with former professional athletes, fellow combat veterans, and this seemed right up my alley. So I absolutely signed up, first chance, and I was on board to come out to their big grand opening. And 48 hours later, I saw a job posting for Merging Vets and Players. Well, I'm going to be there anyway. So I applied, and I loved the concept of bringing these 2 groups together to work on their transition, because they are very similar transitions. If you look at how military culture is, sports culture, you've got these just highly driven professionals who, for the first part of their adult life, their individual identity is tied to the team identity. Their individual mission is tied to the team mission. And everything we do is closely tied to the ethos of the team. And then one day we take the uniform off, the team goes away, and we're left asking, who are we and what are we supposed to be doing? But to get this team back together and to do that thing that we're all comfortable doing and confident doing, working out, physical activity, pushing our boundaries, setting goals. It just seemed like a natural fit, especially when you tie it in with the second half of the program, which is the huddle, where we don't just work on our physical fitness, but also our emotional and mental fitness.
Yeah, and that emotional side is one that's often very challenging when people come out of combat.
Absolutely.
you talk about some of the similarities of being on a team, and how a lot of the athletes, when they get done playing, it's a very challenging time frame for them going through that transition, because the average athlete, probably in a way that's different from the vets, right? They've been playing their sport from a very young age. Most of
Totally.
them started before they're 10 years old, really focused, maybe not on the same sport they went professional, but on playing sports. And so they've
Hmm.
always been around that sports culture, had coaches, had that structure, had that requirement for discipline and motivation. And again, they have to have a lot of that in an innate fashion. But I know when they walk out of that locker room for the last time, or when they're cut for that last time, it's very hard. They feel like their whole support structure, their whole identity is gone. And, it's interesting to see how you guys have been able to piece those two groups together to address those types of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of military veterans, a lot of service members, they adapted to that team ethos in the military because they started playing sports when they were a kid. And you look at a lot of sports, there's a saying in Victorian England that the battles of tomorrow will be won on the playing fields today. And a lot of our sports drive home that team culture that is so successful in our military as well. So there's a natural uh, uh, connection between those cultures going back to when we were kids.
So when the organization, tell us a little bit now more about the organization and how it was founded. I know we've gone through some of the
Yeah.
basics, but when Jay kind of came up with the idea, um, was that something that was really his on his own? I know he does a lot of workouts with vets, and that's really one of his passions,
Total.
in
He's one of the most committed individuals to uh, first responders and military and the teams that sort of set the foundation for public safety and security in this country. His connection to our community goes back to September 11th. He was there in New York when it all happened. He had friends uh, at Ground Zero, and he was down there trying to find them in the days afterwards. And he talks about seeing a flyby as he's down there near Ground Zero, and the comfort and the confidence that inspired in him, and his commitment to our community stems from that, because he saw firsthand our commitment to our community and our country. So I'm really grateful for that. MVP itself did start in Los Angeles about 4 years ago at Unbreakable Fitness. That's Jay Glazer's gym. It was when Jay Glazer and Nate Boyer, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, has one of the most ridiculous resumes I've ever heard of. But he was a special forces operator in the Army for 10 years, uh, left the military to go to school on the GI Bill, walked onto the University of Texas football team, because that's something you do when you're 30. And after graduating, he was an undrafted free agent with the Seattle Seahawks. So you've got these two guys who have deep connections to military culture, deep connections to sports culture. Jay Glazer is not just a sports commentator. He's also active in the MMA community. He's fought himself. He's gotten into the ring with some real heavy hitters. So, both guys who are the real deal. And one day they just got that phone call nobody wants to get. One of Nate's friends, special forces operator, retired, and one of Jay Glazer's friends, former NFL player. They were in the bad place, and they had written their notes. They had the gun in hand. They were saying their goodbyes, and God bless them, both Jay and Nate got to get these guys the support they needed. and they got them to therapy and to the rehab centers. Both of those guys are living their best lives now. Most importantly, still alive because of their intervention. And this was kind of a clarion call for Jay and Nate. These are their brothers, their family. So what do we do? And they did the thing that comes naturally to vets and to athletes, and that's get your butts in the gym. And they brought in I think it was like a half dozen vets, a couple of former pro athletes. Jay closed down Unbreakable for the night, and they worked out. They got a good burn on, they got a good sweat on, and then they sat down and they're just like, guys, what's going on in your life? Who are you, and where do you want to be? What are your challenges? What are your achievements? And that first night, there were a lot of challenges and not a lot of achievements yet. And they spent about 6 months, once a week, getting together, working out, and getting to know themselves, getting to know where they want to go. And in the course of that first year or so, you had guys who were long-term unemployed find jobs. You had guys who were long-term homeless or had substance abuse issues find permanent housing and get cleaned up. I had one guy who hadn't talked to his family in 6 years actually make a connection and talk to his mom back in Wisconsin for the first time since he left the military. So you saw this real demonstrable improvement in people's lives. And it was a program that people really enjoyed doing. There was nothing about, this isn't, forcing kids to eat their broccoli. This was something that people actually enjoy doing. They enjoy getting together with their bros. They enjoy working out. And they enjoy talking with people that they've shared an experience with, that they share trust with. And it wasn't long before they expand to Las Vegas, working out of Randy Couture's gym. In 2018, we expanded here to Chicago and in Atlanta. Actually, just a week before everything shut down, we had our grand opening in New York. The program stayed the same for the last 4 years. We get a really good cardio workout, circuit training workout. We do a lot of boxing and combat sport drills. The idea is to do repetitive matching motions with our workout. And that does a lot of things. It engages the entirety of your brain. It engages the part of your brain that does emotional processing. It gets your heart beating and your lungs pumping, and gets oxygen into your brain, pumps a little endorphins around, gives you a little boost of adrenaline, gives you those feel-good drugs that naturally get produced by your body. And then after 45 minutes of workout, you cool down, you take a stretch, and we sit in a circle, and that's when we start talking about life. And that's the huddle. That's the little fireside chat where we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's an open forum, a safe space for our guys to talk about whatever's on their mind with people who have been there, with people who, even if they haven't done the same exact thing, they've done something similar, and they can understand each other's challenges. And when one of our guys does have an achievement, when one of our guys does have a success, like one of our guys here in Chicago, since he's been working out here in the last year or so, he's dropped 40 pounds, and wow. He's well on his way to knock out the next 10. That's his first goal. He wants to get under 300, get back into the 290s or so. And from there, maybe the next step is get back where he was when he started driving trucks, and then maybe get that job back. And then maybe from there, get back to where he was when he was serving in the Navy. But just where he has come so far in the last year has been remarkable. And we're so incredibly proud of him. And it's so great to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, bro, I am proud of you. Because this isn't just a workout group that gets together. It really is getting the family back together. And it's not just for the vets side. And this is something that, we explain to our athletes all the time. It's like, okay, you're here. You want to do something nice for the vets. That's awesome. We get that. And we are truly, honestly appreciative of that. But this is your family too. This is your resource too. And for one of our guys, he's a mixed martial artist. It really hit home for him recently. Last year, he was in Rome training for a big title bout with Brave Combat Federation, and his father passed away. And his father was a huge part of his life, huge part of his support system. He was a huge part of his training team. Just having that support there was huge in getting ready for a fight. And he came back home, and all of a sudden he finds himself having to organize a funeral for the first time, cope with a death in the family for the first time. And he let me know about that, and I was like, "Well, do you mind if we share this with our members?" I know it's like, no, that's fine. I'm putting it out on social media. Let them know. I don't mind. And so I told the team, and the outpouring of support was great. We found out, he told us where the wake was going to be, where the funeral was going to be. Members turned up. Some of our longtime members turned up and really supported him and talked with him. And folks like me, I'd lost my father about 2 years ago, so I knew the pain he was going through. Folks who had lost family members who understood that were there and answered questions and gave advice. And he came away from that experience like, I didn't realize I needed a team like this. That's what he told me. And it's we're here. We've all had different experiences. We're all definitely a little bit weird. And you get away from the team, you forget how valuable being weird is, because you're part of a team and you're with other weird people who are unique in a very similar way. And then you're used to that sort of conformity. Everybody wears the uniform. Everybody looks the same. Everybody talks the same, uses the same language. And then you get away from the team, and now you're the only one who talks like that. You were weird this entire time, whether you were an athlete or you were a service member.
Right, absolutely.
But then you get among the folks who weren't on the team with you, and you realize just how weird you were. You know what? Weird is awesome. Weird is what made you a badass. And this is something Jay Glazer drives home every time. Be proud of your weird. Be proud of your scars. Be proud of the shit that sets you apart. If you pardon my French, we get a little liberal with our language when we start talking MVP. Be proud of that stuff and own your weirdness. And the things that make you uncomfortable, be it a new workout regimen or loss of a family member, as a number of our members have been facing lately. Though that pain and that discomfort are opportunities for growth. Change can be productive and constructive, even when it feels destructive. And having team members around, having your fellow weirdos around who have been through something similar, that's what can change that destructive change to constructive change. And it can change anger from being impotent to being motivating. Change happens in all of our lives. And what makes the difference, what makes it better, is having somebody to guide you through it. And that's what you need a team for. That's what we need a team for.
I think one of the great things about what you were just sharing is it speaks to the fact that these individual stories make such a great impact on the individuals as they are going through this. And you're working with these vets and everybody coming through your MVP program. You're making an impact one-on-one, but that word gets out through the network. And it really,
absolutely,
it's a type of support group where other people hear about how well it's worked for one of theirs that's
Mm.
gone and participated in the program. And it's such a comfort to see for people that are in that space, as you said, to not feel like they're alone, right? To
Mhm.
not feel like they're bad because they're having to deal with certain issues, you know, and to be able to own that weird or whatever description you said that Jay really says, like, own that part of being weird. That's okay to be weird, because we're all weird, that we're all different in various ways, and that's what makes life interesting. If everybody was the same, right, it wouldn't be that interesting of a conversation. It wouldn't be that interesting of an interaction. And so the ability to learn from other people and understand where they are in their lives, the challenges that they're going through and the hurdles that they're facing, because nobody gets through life without some drama. And
Right.
obviously, you know, as we sit here recording this in the COVID-19 crisis, everybody's going through drama. But um, that will go away for most people. Unfortunately, there's a huge number of people that are passing away from this, and we hope those numbers don't keep going up. But you look at the rest of life, people can go through decades and decades and decades of their life without any problem, and all of a sudden they'll have a couple of tragedies really close together, and some people have it very early on in their life. And what's interesting and heartwarming is when you see people rallying together and looking at, how can I help other individuals, right? I might not need the help right now. We don't know when I'm going to need that help, right? But while I'm in a good spot, I'm going to do everything I can to help people.
Totally.
And you know, when you talk about the MVP program, you know, you're based here in Chicago. Um, Tell us a little bit about, like, what facilities you use and what the structure of the program looks like.
So here in Chicago, we work out of POW Gym Chicago. It's located on the near west side around Racine and Jackson, 310 South Racine. Um, and they have been a fixture on the near west side for about 20 years now. The owner, our claim to fame, Kat Ogren, is first of all just absolutely a badass human being. She's a force of nature. But also, if you are familiar with video games, if you ever played the original Mortal Kombat back in the day, Kat is Katana. She is the martial artist that they brought in to do the motion capture. So when you play as Katana, that is actually the owner of our gym. It's actually pretty cool. Every time we have big events at POW Gym, if they're available, she gets members of the original cast to come in costume. So it's pretty impressive to go through a workout and get your butt kicked by Mortal Kombat's Katana. But absolutely fantastic facility on the near west side. Huge padded studio for doing combat sports, so we can roll and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We've got Muay Thai champions come in and train us. Our main trainer, Dwayne Allen, is a speed and strength conditioning coach. He's also familiar with a couple different forms of martial arts, so he's perfectly comfortable transitioning from sprints and agility drills to combat sport drills such as boxing and Muay Thai. But you know, in addition to the studio and the weight facility there and the sprint track that they have, you know, of course, during this time, we can't get together like the way we want to. So every chapter, all 5 chapters across MVP have instituted virtual MVP sessions where we get together via a Zoom web conference. It's a secure, password protected conference room. So when you come in, our trainers will lead us through a half-hour workout. And after the workout's over, we still do our huddle. We're not sitting in a circle in the same room, but we can all look each other in the eye and talk about what's going on in our life, and we can be comfortable and secure in the fact that our conversation is strictly among members, strictly among your fellow combat vets or your fellow athletes. And you still get that opportunity to share what's going on in your life with people who have that shared experience and who you trust.
So we haven't talked about how somebody would get into MVP as an athlete or a vet. So obviously, as you said, we're all stuck at home now. People are looking at different options. Maybe
Okay.
um, in the normal functioning of the world, they had enough of a support structure and enough of a
Mm-hmm.
way to engage and interact. Now, today, they're looking for something that's a little bit different. And I think what you're describing as the huddle is really something that's very meaningful, gives people an opportunity to open up in a safe space, in a safe community where they know that many of the people there share some of the experiences that they share. So they're much more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
discussing and disclosing what goes on. Um, Tell us more about how somebody who fits that demographic would get involved with you.
The easiest way is to go to vetsandplayers.org/join. And I'll share that link with you. You can share it with your members, but it's our sign up web form. You fill out a couple of pieces of information. Someone from our admin team will get in touch with you shortly thereafter and put you in touch with your nearest MVP chapter program manager. The nice thing about the silver lining to the coronavirus lockdown is now we are doing this via Zoom web conference, and you don't have to be in Chicago to attend the Chicago chapter meeting. We've had new members join us from Indiana, Michigan. We've had long-standing members who are out of town on business call in from Mexico. One of our guys is currently deployed to Vicenza, Italy. So there is an opportunity to engage with MVP from wherever you are. So if you're on the East Coast, you're probably going to get plugged in with our New York chapter. If you're down the Southeast, you're probably going to get plugged in with Atlanta, so on and so forth. Yeah, go to join, fill out the web form. You'll be connected with an MVP program manager. Let you know what night that chapter meets. It's usually between 6 and start times are between 6 and 7:30 p.m. Depending on where you're at. And yeah, the goal is just to get the team together. The first 4 sessions are kind of going to be your introduction. The first session, that's your gimme. Just take a look at it. Maybe it's not for you. I get that. You don't have to come back. But if you want to come back for the second session, there is a more robust registration form that you got to fill out. You come back for the third session, and after that, we have a kind of a conversation one-on-one with the program manager and the new member. Talk about what you're looking to get from the program, maybe start setting some goals. And then the fourth session, once you complete your fourth session, you're a fully fledged member. And as you can see, we're on a Zoom web conference. I don't know if it's going to show up on the podcast so well, but the t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, that's your jersey. That's your unit patch. Once you've joined gone through your fourth session, you're a fully fledged member. You get one of these t-shirts provided by Zappos. And that's you're part of the team. And then after that, we've got other things that you earn. After 24 sessions, you earn a hat. After 52 sessions, Michael Strand has actually provided us with a supply of challenge coins. And I don't know if you're familiar with challenge coins, but they're usually, about that big, little actual coin shape. No, this thing's like a plaque. This thing's like 2 inches by 2 inches, and it's in the shape of body armor with the MVP logo across it. It's actually really impressive. We want to recognize our members who have made a commitment. That commitment is still going to be recognized, even though we're not getting together in person. But it all starts by going to vetsandplayers.org/join.
And you describe a great process. I think one of the challenges in many environments is the fact of transportation and geography. And
Hmm.
so people want to get together, but unless you're living somewhere where there's a sufficiently dense population to merit getting everyone together, it can often be difficult or isolating. And I think what's interesting is going to be to watch what happens coming out of this crisis on
Yeah,
how many groups now embrace not entirely virtual memberships and interactions, but adding that to the inventory and to the repertoire of what they do. Because even just on a family or business basis, right? You could be in Chicago,
hmm,
but Chicago's pretty spread out. So, I'm up in Vernon Hills, 35 miles, north of the city. To get downtown, right now it's probably great. Probably only take me about half an hour to get downtown. But normally at a rush hour type of thing with regular traffic, you're talking hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And so there's a lot of people that can't take that bite out of their day from a family or
absolutely.
work perspective. So they still want to participate personally some of the time, but giving people an opportunity to have that resource of virtual interaction. How many chapters are there around the country of MVP, and where are they located?
There are 5 chapters of MVP. Started, of course, in Los Angeles, and the expansion pretty much moved eastward. Generally, it's Las Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, and New York City. And
Okay.
yeah, our newest chapter had our grand opening at Henzo Gracie's gym in Manhattan, and ever since then, we've all been on virtual. So it's you know it's awesome that we've got 5 chapters, all 4 time zones in the continental U.S. It makes our team conference calls a little challenging to coordinate because it's mid-afternoon someplace and it's getting into evening time elsewhere. But we keep the team together nonetheless. But now, especially, we're on this virtual program. It's a really awesome opportunity to expand and provide even greater access. I don't know what it's going to look like after this is all over. But we're definitely talking about, what are some different ways we can keep these virtual sessions going, because it's just such a fantastic opportunity for everybody to get a little taste of it. Obviously, we want to get back to doing in-person sessions. I think there's a little magic that goes on when you get to see somebody face to face and get to get within striking range of somebody in the gym. But also let's keep this room open. Let's keep this door open, just as an opportunity for folks all over the country to participate. Our ultimate goal is to get an MVP chapter in every city where there's an NFL franchise. But still a lot of folks in Nebraska and Kentucky and Rhode Island who served or played, and we want to be there for them.
So you just talked about the goals and the expansion to be in every city where there's an NFL franchise. So,
Mhm.
we'll skip the London chapter that you probably will need by the time you get there. But
I'm
uh,
game.
exactly, where is the next expansion looking at? What cities do you think are coming online
you know,
most
there's
quickly?
there's nothing set in stone yet, but there is a lot of excitement about getting a chapter to Pittsburgh. We've got some really excited sponsors and also a really robust veterans and athletic community there in Western Pennsylvania. Uh, Nate, one of our founders, of course, has a really close connection with Seattle because he did play up there briefly. So, his connection there, we want to recognize that. And, there are other great military and sports communities like the Phoenix area, Dallas, Houston, Texas as well, Florida, of course, great sporting culture and also a very dense veterans population. So it's hard to say what's next, but we've got 4 or 5 targets in mind, and we're working out the details. It's expanding into a new market is definitely not something you want to ready, fire, aim. So we are taking our time. We're doing things intentionally. We're setting up our ground game, but because there's a lot of organizing that goes into setting up a new chapter, not just getting space for the gym, but also lining up funders, building relationships with local teams and local nonprofits. Because whenever a new organization moves into a market, you want to play nice. You want to become part of the existing team. We're not here to compete with anybody. We don't want to take anybody's vets or players away from them. We want to be the extra resource for everybody's organization.
So you talked about the expansion and everything that you're doing. What are some ways that our listeners or other people in the sports philanthropy community can help support those types of efforts? What are the best things that they can do for you?
One of the best things you can do is, one, you can always reach out to us one-on-one via vetsandplayers.org or through our social media outlets. Connect with us. We'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with you. Also, share our content, share our join link with any players you might know. This is something that we actually talk with sports agents frequently about, is MVP can be a real resource for you and for your clients, because we'll be happy to talk to an athlete who is between teams. In fact, just recently, one of our players, Alden Smith, got signed with the Dallas Cowboys. That's his first NFL contract, and I want to say 4 years. And he's able to take on that next opportunity because he built himself up mentally and physically with merging vets and players. I really do, and he really feels that was a big part of his return to the NFL. So if you've got players in your life who are between opportunities, we can be a real resource, not just like end of career, but in mid-career, to offer the support you need when trying to figure out your next move. I know that can be a real disheartening thing where physically you're still in the game. You've still got the tools to make it onto a team, but you don't have that team supporting you and giving you the confidence to take your next step.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And I think people who haven't been around that space, I know from being an NFL agent, that you look at the caliber of the players, and people, the average fan focuses really on the elite players, right? So you're taking the star players, you're taking the fantasy football names that and people are like, oh, this guy's no good, this guy's a scrub. It's like, okay, so they're the 15th 15th best receiver, but again, you're in a 10-team league, so that's a second tier receiver to you, right? These are incredible athletes. And what I always found interesting is that you looked at the numbers, and every year coming out of college, there's 1,500 players that sign with agents, and there's 250 that are drafted. And there's about 350 more that sign undrafted free agent contracts. So even at the top of the scale, you're only talking about 600 out of 1,500. That's 40% that are getting into a camp. That's not even making the team. And when you go and look at the numbers in the NFL of 53 plus practice squad times 32 teams, you're talking around 2,000 players, just using rough numbers. And clearly the top level are guys that you can't substitute for, right? If you lose an elite running back, receiver, quarterback, defensive player like a JJ Watt or things like that, it's very hard. There's not just guys sitting around on the street that can match that talent. But when you go down to that bottom quarter, bottom third, those 500 or 600 guys that would be classified as sort of the bottom of the league, there's another 2,000 guys that are sitting at home that are basically as good or almost as good. You know, why
Mm-hmm.
is Bobby sitting at home and Roy's in a camp or vice versa? It's very hard to put your finger on that. Some of it's luck, some of it's relationships, some of it's just happening to get hurt at the wrong time or be in the wrong camp. I've seen guys that should make teams and they're in a camp and all of a sudden the team has an array of injuries at a completely different position, and they say, okay, now we can't keep 6 receivers. Now we're only going to keep 5 receivers, so you're
Right.
cut. Well, now you're coming into another camp late. You may not get the opportunity with the new team because the other guys that you're as good or better than have been there for this summer, have been there for a month of fall training camp. So there's a lot of vagaries in the system, and it can be really frustrating, as you said, to do that. And I've seen some great guys struggle with that, and sometimes they get back in, and sometimes they don't. Um, so, Bobby, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing everything with us. It's been really interesting. I know that there's a lot of people in our network that deal with athletes all the time, that many organizations that have vets involved as well. And I think it's a terrific resource to be able to connect them with you. Before we let you go, I kind of want to put you on the spot for a minute and use
Sure.
our sports philanthropy superpowers here. And I want to offer you the commissionership of any sport. So what sport would that be?
That's funny. One of my hobbies in my spare time is I really am fascinated with sport rules. One of my pet projects has actually been coming up with a new code of football, which is just like the ultimate sport that me personally I would want to watch. And it's just kind of a hybrid of all of the different codes of football. But if you could put me in charge of any sport, I think I put me in charge of any of them. I think one of the big things that I would want to see is more supporter ownership. And I want to see fans have more of a say in how sports are run. And, you look at what happened to the Cleveland Browns. The city of Cleveland had their football team taken away, went to Baltimore, became the Ravens, had tremendous success, and Cleveland was actually left without a team. This actually happened to a soccer club in England. The community of Wimbledon in South London had their own football club. It was for a neighborhood in London, but they had a professional football club, won the FA Cup, and then the Football Association in England decided it is not in the best interest of the sport for you to have a team anymore. So we're taking your team and moving it to a community like 70 miles away or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was infuriating. So what did they do? English soccer has a really cool system where if you want a team, you don't have to expand into the top flight. You don't need a billionaire sugar daddy. You can just go out to your local park, make sure everybody's wearing matching T-shirts, and boom, you're playing at like the 9th tier. And then you can slowly win promotion,
Yep. You work your way back up and
you know what? Over the course of 6 years, AFC Wimbledon, this team started by a bunch of pissed off soccer fans who were like, you know what? Hell with you. I want a team back in my community. They went out into the local park. They started at the 9th tier. They worked their way back up and in rapid order earned their way back into the Football League, the 4th tier. They're now playing in the 3rd tier. And it looks like they're going to stay up again. And a couple of seasons, they have actually finished higher than the club that got moved away from their hometown. I'm actually a part owner of AFC Wimbledon because it is a fan-owned club, and anybody who contributes 25 English pounds can be a part owner. And if I get to England and get to London when they're having their board meeting, I can actually vote on who gets to be on their board. I would love to see more of that. It actually kills me as a Chicago Bears fan that our hated rivals, the Green Bay Packers, are a supporter-owned club. It's not
Supporter
like
owned with no actual authority, but
no actual authority, but they get closer to it than any other franchise in the United
yeah.
States. And so I think if you gave me godlike power over American sport, I think that's one thing I would want to see is more fan ownership. I would want to see players have a little more say in what happens. I'd love to see managers, all four of those groups, the fans, the players, the managers, and of course, capital, who owns the club. They've got the only seat on board right now. But I'd love to see those other three groups have a little bit of a voice, because sport
that would be interesting. I think the owners here wouldn't like making those. You
not at
wouldn't get
all,
those big investment
not at
dollars
all.
that the leagues get for the expansion tag if all of
Yeah.
a sudden Jimmy Haslam could be losing the Browns down to the second tier of
Right.
professional football. It would make it tough to get the investments for the stadiums and other things. But I've always argued that would be an interesting model to see,
Yeah.
because it would really put a different kind of pressure and urgency
Mhm.
on the teams. You couldn't just be quote unquote tanking for the first draft pick,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't the NFL wouldn't want the first draft pick going to a team that's now descending to a lower league.
You're right.
So what would you do? Would you give it, you actually would be rewarding the top three picks would go to the teams that are coming up from the second division.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then those are the teams that would get the first three picks, which would actually be an interesting switch of having teams that have been successful and are on the rise getting
Yep.
those first three picks instead of the other way around.
And it's even if we don't get into promotion and relegation, the fact is that sports are you're selling more than the wins and the losses. You're a sports team is the community that's built around it.
Yep.
And right now, that community has no say, at least in the United States, in the major leagues, no say in what happens to that club as a business, as a community, or as a sporting concern. And so I just want to see a little more representation. I'm a political science nerd. That's why I got my degree in. Regardless, I think we're all seeing right now what not having sport around does. It fills a huge gap in our personal and our community narrative. It gives us a little soap opera that we can all focus on, and it's something that brings us together. I think Mark Cuban has a really great attitude towards it. It's not just a business; it's an experience, and it's a shared experience that we all have a piece in.
And speaking of shared experiences, Bobby, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all of your insight and experience. It's really been interesting to learn more about merging vets and players. I know that there's so many people in our network that can utilize this information and hopefully refer people into your group and find ways to connect and offer value to the people that are going through your programs. So we appreciate your time today, and we look forward to helping you as you move forward with MVP.
Totally. And thank you for this opportunity. And I appreciate you for everything Sports Philanthropy Network's been doing for the sporting community.
Terrific. Well, we want to thank our listeners as well. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope you'll tune back in for the next episode of the Sports Philanthropy Podcast.